Hello, Patriots and all the ships at sea. This is Bryan Rudnick, fearlessly broadcasting from the Rally for the Republic headquarters in the free state of Florida. We still don't know who Kamala is going to select, and no one yet does, and that's probably why they're not inviting me to a White Dudes for Kamala rally. Heck, I'm starting to think that's like a Klan rally, modern-day Klan rally, Kamala's rallies. But you know what? I have no desire to find out, quite frankly. I'm going to the gun range. And then I'm going to go meet up with some friends and drink some great American bourbon. But first, I'm going to drop this episode on you, where we talk about why Trump was brilliant yesterday, why Kamala is nothing but a liar, backtracking on everything. And in addition to all things politics in America, we got Chuck Schumer proving that he might be the dumbest politician ever. This is Bryan Rudnick, Rally for the Republic, and I'll be back to you in a moment.
This is a battle cry for the American way of life and a relentless pursuit of truth and justice. It comes from a voice with unmatched experience and unyielding resolve. Join us as we dissect current events and tip the scales in your favor. This is Rally for the Republic with your host, Bryan Rudnick.
Bryan Rudnick, Rally for the Republic in the headquarters. Moments before I get to enjoy my freedoms here in the free state of Florida. And before we talk about Trump's brilliance yesterday and Kamala's lies, let's talk about a few other topics, bring you up to speed for those of you who treat politics like some people treat sports. Kari Lake won in the U.S. Senate nomination, or the Republican nomination for the U.S. Senate in Arizona. So did Abe Hamadeh for U.S. Congress. They were both endorsed by Trump against some of them were MAGA candidates, and it's looking like Trump's imprimatur is still working. And then in New Jersey, a federal judge said a ban on AR-15 rifles is unconstitutional. However, somehow the wacky New Jersey laws where you're only allowed 10 bullets and 3 eraser tops is a capacity limit there for your magazines on your rifles. Still a legal ban, which thankfully there's a lot of great Second Amendment organizations out there that are going to continue to fight that ridiculous logic. Because that logic is kind of weird, as the Democrats like to use, as idiotic as their candidates are. They're claiming, this is the funny part, these people are saying an AR-15 is a weapon of war. And anybody tells you the AR-15 is a weapon of war clearly has never shot one. They've never seen one in person. They have no idea how it works and why it's so different than the firearms we give to soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines. But then again, that's the left for you. I think if they want to learn the truth, they should go to Chicago, spend a whole weekend. There should be like liberal retreats in Chicago. And you get to see the full autos and the pistols that are used. Probably nothing. They might have a Kel-Tec, might have a Saturday night special. Probably no AR-15s. I'm pretty sure AR-15 is not the weapon of choice for the Bloods and Crips. Limited experience on that. Hopefully somebody will tell me if I'm right or wrong. But in Virginia, Bob Good, he's getting his recount today. Might have to pay for it himself. Find out if he still gets to be a member of Congress. And it gets you thinking, just to go back to that topic on AR-15s, one of the things that I saw here in the articles that were written about why AR-15s should not be allowed is because apparently they're the choice of mass murderers and they're just so dangerous and all this garbage, right? And I'm thinking, if they say it's the leading cause, why they need to ban this gun is the leading cause. Whatever happened to law enforcement? Maybe the left should think about what if we had more law enforcement and we funded them properly and we trained them properly and they learned how to go out and find the bad people in the community. And, we already know, we've seen every time there have been incidents, there has been a pattern of behavior by people, whether it's Matthew Crooks, whether it was the kid in Nashville, whether it's here in Parkland, anywhere in the country where this stuff was happening, whether they used an AR-15 or not. We're seeing there's a pattern of behavior that people identified, yet they didn't either report or when it was reported, action was not properly taken. So maybe like Kamala likes to look at the root of the problem, the left should look at the problem of mass killings. It's not the availability of AR-15s or any other weapon that may use 1 bullet, 10 bullets, 15 bullets, 20, 30. It doesn't matter. Maybe it's the fact that we're ignoring that there are people in our society who have mental health issues and they need to be properly cared for. Just my thoughts based on reality. Okay, so we talked about Bob Good. Now we head over to Chuck Schumer, Goody Chuck Schumer, the U.S. Senate, who announced today a piece of legislation called the No Kings Act. I know you're shocked. You're thinking, wow, he wants to do great things, right? So he wants to remove immunity that the judges at the Supreme Court can have for basically holding president, vice president accountable, stuff like that, because he's very upset at the recent rulings at the U.S. Supreme Court. And why should he worry about inflation? And why should he worry about funding the police to stop mass murders? Why should he worry about securing the border when he could just keep picking on Donald Trump? Or is he foreshadowing to us that he acknowledges Donald Trump will be president of the United States? You got to think about that. But I posed a question on Facebook earlier this morning, and I said, while we're at it, well, Chuck Schumer is putting out this No Kings Act that obviously isn't going to pass, especially not in the U.S. House. And I think anybody who understands what the founding fathers had in mind about executive branch immunity will have to, vote no on this ridiculous bill. But I think if we're going to be fair, Chuck Schumer wants to pretend to be fair. If he wants to pretend to be a leader, remember these Democrats are all about protecting democracy and freedom, and they got to kill babies in the womb to make you more free, and they got to steal your guns to make you more free, and they've got to allow social media to censor what you post and publish to make you more free. Remember, that's all about safeguarding democracy. When they control you, when they control every aspect of your life, okay, when they tell you to put on a mask, they tell you to get an injection, they tell you where to walk, how to talk, how to do it, what you can say, when you can't, and we'll get to how they get bent out of shape over what you say in a moment. But you want to be fair. Let's also remove the immunity that the Supreme Court justices have. Let's remove the immunity of all the lifetime appointed federal judges in our country that they have from committing their official acts. And let's remove any immunity that state court judges have. And the United States Constitution, if you don't know, because I recognize not everybody has the time to be the geek like me to study it. And if you want to go to this thing called Article 1 of the United States Constitution, Section 6, it says the senators and representatives shall receive a compensation for their services to be ascertained by law, paid out by the Treasury. They shall, in all cases except treason, felony, and breach of the peace, be privileged from arrest during their attendance at the session of their respective houses, and in going to and in returning to the same, and for any speech or debate in either house, they shall not be questioned in any other place. So, quick summary, you can't arrest members of Congress, either house, to and from going to official business, except for those three things. You can't arrest them and whatnot and all that good stuff, right? So they don't want you to know that they've got special immunity, but they want to take it away from Trump. I say level the playing field. No immunity for our politicians. Why should they be immune for anything they do? I'm sorry. We need to update our laws, our Constitution. I'm a conservative. We don't like change, but sometimes we've got to adapt to get with what's going on in our society. There's a lot of corruption. We have tons of corrupt politicians. Let's say like Nancy Pelosi and her stock trading. What do you think of that? I mean, I think that's like treason when you're supposed to be doing the work of the people and then you're going off getting rich off the information you get sitting up there on Capitol Hill. Or I got one even better for you. Nancy Pelosi botching security at the Capitol on January 6th. Okay, I've talked about it. I'm always going to continue to talk about it. More facts are coming out. They even showed from the HBO documentary that was filmed by her daughter. I think her name's Alexandria or Alexander, something like that, whatever. And by the way, there's speculation she could be the successor for her mother for that San Francisco congressional seat. Just a tidbit to keep in the back of your mind. And in this documentary, apparently they show Pelosi knew. She knew there was going to be a security problem, aside from the fact that Donald Trump told her, and she ignored it. Right? And to me, that sounds like what the Constitution might be referring to when they say breach of the peace, because she allowed there to be a breach of the peace and she did nothing about it. So before Chuck Schumer even worries about the No Kings Act, I say hold Pelosi accountable. Here's something we can legitimately hold her accountable for, not hyperbole. Chuck Schumer, would rather spend time on stupid things like the No Kings Act than making sure we bring down the cost of gas, food, secure the border, anything that's actually legitimately going to help Americans, that Americans elected their representatives to help fix while they suffer because of Democrat policies. Let's move it right along. Let's get into the topic I'm sure you want to hear me opine about. Before I tell you about great bourbons, that'll probably be another episode. But Donald Trump, I'm sure you've heard, was in a lot of media coverage already on this. He was at the National Association of Black Journalists. He was speaking to the fine ladies who got together and invited him, and even over protests, they allowed him to speak. And of course, depending on what kind of media you're listening to, liberals are going crazy. He's a racist. He made racist remarks. He abused them. He was nasty. He was derogatory, all that stuff. And conservatives, it's very funny. The opposite there was they abused him. He went into the lion's den. He put up with them and, stood up to what they were doing. So let's talk about what happened. Because personally, I think what he did was absolutely brilliant. I don't think you're going to hear other people say that. That's my opinion. I haven't been listening to others. And the reason why I'm going to say that it's brilliant, I'm going to dive into this for you. First of all, Kamala is now campaigning as a proud black woman, the proud sorority sin, going to all these sorority meetings, all that stuff. She's proud. She wants to cruise into office as the first black female. She doesn't want you calling her DEI or DEI candidate or DEI vice president or DEI president. In fact, they say it's rude for you to do that. And after yesterday's events, Team Kamala says she can identify however she wants to identify. And it's rude to say otherwise. This is like pigs are cows, cows are pigs, boys are girls, girls are boys, apples are oranges, oranges are pears. Who knows? Apparently everybody can identify any which way they want, any color, any creed, any pronoun, any religion. Doesn't matter. We're all moldable, apparently. Okay. So now Trump shows up and they're asking him questions, but I want to set some context. Okay. Because, I've had people contact me and they say, wow, with Trump, he's up to the antics again. He's not soft anymore. He didn't learn. He didn't change. I don't know why you thought he was going to change. I didn't think an 80-year-old man or almost 80-year-old man doesn't typically change all that much. That's my experience. But, let's dive into a couple of things. It's very important to lay this out because Donald Trump plays multidimensional chess. The left, and I know this from when I was a student at Brandeis, the left is all about their emotions. Logic, it doesn't matter. This is not like quoting Jack Nicholson from As Good as It Gets. I think about a woman, and when he tells they ask him as an author, how does he write a woman in his books? And he says something to the effect of, I think of a man and I take away all logic and reasoning. No, this isn't quite that because that applies to those dudes who appear on the Kamala calls too. So they all get even the dudes get their panties all up in a bind. Kamala Harris, remember, she and her posse don't want you thinking of her as the DEI candidate. But on May 29, 2024, I saw somebody posted this on social media, and rather than just accept the fact that it was on social media and that it looked official, I personally went to the whitehouse.gov website where they probably tracked me, and they'll probably be here at my studio before I'm done recording. And there was a Biden-Harris campaign event, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and the words of Joe Biden make it very clear. Together, we make history, not erase it. To me, the values of diversity, equality, inclusion are literally, and this is not kidding, the core strengths of America. That's why I'm proud to have the most diverse administration in history that taps into the full talents of our country. And it starts with at the top, with the vice president. So as we all know, on May 29 of 2024, just about a few weeks ago, Kamala Harris was the vice president. And it was okay for Joe Biden, who, by the way, is a known racist. Lots of proof on that. And Kamala Harris worked for and continues to work for a known racist who referred to her as basically the DEI vice president. And it was okay when a DEI vice president reference gets made by Joe Biden, the known racist. But if Donald Trump makes it, he's bad. So you always have to, as soon as you hear these controversies surrounding Donald Trump and the words he may or may not have used, you want to do your own due diligence, like Amber Rose talked about at the convention a week and a half ago. You want to do your own due diligence. You want to say, what did Trump say? Why did he say it? Is there more context that we need to have to this? Because Trump is not a dumb man, and he's not as crazy as the left wants you to think he is. Members of the media elite, the ladies in the room, elsewhere, they're gasp. Oh my God, he said it. He's a racist. What did Trump say? Okay. So first he gets there and they're basically attacking him right off the bat. Okay. They're asking about how he attacked the squad. Okay. And they're peppering him with questions. And he even said it's pretty rude. And then, he fired back with the one of the ladies who asked him. There's about 4 black lady journalists who were asking him questions on the stage, and he had held his composure, and he just looked at her very plainly, as Trump can do. And he says, "Are you with ABC? Because I think they're a fake news network, a terrible network." And these women get ballistic because Trump said to their face what he would normally say anywhere. And unless you've been under a rock since 2015, unless you failed to see the debate that Megyn Kelly was one of the moderators for, this sounds pretty tame. So I would look to those ladies at the National Black Journalists Association, whatever it was, and I'd say, ladies, it's time to put on your big girl pantsuits and realize if you're going to cover politics, especially in the age of Donald Trump, it ain't going to be Barbie's dream house party. Because you're attacking the man, asking him questions about how he interacted with AOC and the squad, called them animals and whatever else he called them. Well, look at their behavior and then ask yourself, if those were your children, what would you call them? Do they act appropriately? Are they professional? Are they siding with terrorists? The barbarians who rape and murder women and children? Does that not sound? Animal sounds like it's a compliment compared to the people they typically associate with. So let's be real. He was treated worse there than a Republican guest on The View. That's how rudely they treated him. They abused him, and all he did was share his thoughts without fear because he's a leader who has confidence. He's a brilliant man. So he's there. We're going to just set the context. He's at the National Association of Black Journalists, who for days leading up to it, very controversial. People are going to boycott. They're complaining. How could you let him speak? This and that. And it's so funny because they want to hold him accountable that, like, he's crazy. He's mad. He's not an adult. Look at his behavior. Look what he said about Kamala and her husband, which, by the way, I have some of those quotes here. He was on New York radio, WABC, and, the host called Doug Emhoff, the second gentleman, Kamala's husband, Dougie, a crappy Jew. And I had a friend, after that happened, posted on Facebook, he couldn't believe Donald Trump did that. And he said, Kamala Harris is married to a Jewish man, and she doesn't like Jewish people. And you could see the disdain, he said, adding, number 1, she doesn't like Israel. Number 2, she doesn't like Jewish people. You know it, I know it, and everybody knows it, and nobody wants to say it. You know what I say? Donald Trump is 110% correct. Kamala Harris hates Jewish people. She hates Israel. And I pointed that out on my show just days ago. Look at what she did to Netanyahu. Look at what she's done all along to Israel. I don't care that Doug is Jewish. Look at his children. They're self-hating Jews. His kids were supporting Palestinians and Hamas. And he's not ashamed of it. And Kamala's not ashamed of it. In fact, she's like digging in on that stuff, attacking Israel. Anybody who's been around politics, seen diplomacy in action, knows that Kamala's words and all these supposed statements about fighting and being against anti-Semitism, she always finds a way to weave in there, smack in the face to Israel. That's not a supporter of Israel. No, you're a supporter of Hamas, Kamala. And Donald Trump is 100% right. Now, I will tell you, he puts in here, America's better than, their response, by the way, is, and I'm talking about Team Kamala, the gals over at Team Kamala. I think they're gals. We should ask them their pronouns. America's better than the fear, hate, and despicable insults of Donald Trump. Vice President Harris believes Americans want a president who unites our country instead of divides it, uses the power of the presidency to help families instead of hurt them, and has a vision for our future instead of taking us backwards. Really? Well, let's break that down. A president who doesn't divide us. You mean like we need white dudes for Kamala and black dudes and black ladies for Kamala? Yeah, because that sounds unifying. Okay. Uses the power of the presidency to help families instead of hurting. You mean like securing the border, keeping fentanyl off the streets, supporting the police, lowering taxes, not spending so much, not causing inflation. I mean, those are things that under the Trump administration did a lot to help families. I don't know why we wouldn't want to go backwards. In fact, gas price was lower. Everything was more affordable. Not seeing a problem here with going backwards. How about you, America? Are you? Because Kamala seems to misunderstand that America can't afford to be America right now. Donald Trump is right. He is absolutely right. She hates Jewish people. She hates her own husband, probably. Or maybe she doesn't because he just doesn't acknowledge being a Jew. And they definitely aren't supporting Israel. No question about it. But let's go back specifically to the National Association of Black Journalists, this meeting that caused the brouhaha because Donald Trump spoke, and he spoke truth to power. And what did he do? So they asked him, obviously, about Kamala Harris. I'm not going through every question. Don't worry. I'm just breaking down to the important parts here, right? So he says, in case you haven't heard this elsewhere, I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she ran as black. And now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black? And then they, of course, they erupted because in their minds, they were waiting for Donald Trump to do something bad in their minds. To me, if you take that in context, he didn't say she's not black, she's a bad black, nothing. He didn't say there's anything wrong. He said he was confused because of her words, her behavior. And he continued and he said, I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't because she was Indian all the way. And then all of a sudden she made a turn and she became a black person. Now, this is a man of almost 80 years old, and this is how he's explaining race issues that doesn't sound inclusive to the left. Okay, well, guess what? This is just like the January 6, 2021 speech. He said, march peacefully, and next they blamed Trump for riots. Okay? Think about that. Trump doesn't use words that the left can understand. He just talks plainly. He didn't say anything wrong. He said, I respect. Racists don't say I respect. They say very different words. But they don't say I respect. So apparently he's like a racist. He's a bad person. And let me tell you, I personally remember as somebody who for nearly 30 years has been following national politics. Obviously, I've had to pay attention to Kamala now for quite a few years. And I remember her bragging about being of Indian descent. Yesterday, after this broke, of course, lots of stuff was online. I even saw pictures of her wearing, I think it's called a sarah, and other attire that Indian women wear at Indian events that she was wearing as a child. And I remember the interviews that she gave about her mother and her life story. And now I even today went to do more research before coming to broadcast. And I saw interviews with a journalist from an Indian media source. I don't remember the name, but I kept it. Benny Johnson, by the way, has it on his Twitter feed. And she made it very clear. He asked her, boy, it's a big accomplishment. You're going to be the first Indian U.S. senator. And she was all giddy about it. And she said, absolutely. She didn't deny it. She didn't say I'm Indian black. She didn't say I'm Indian African-American. No, she made it very clear I'm Indian. She was proud to be Indian. Now, let's go one step further. United States media, Sacramento Bee, probably not a conservative outlet. And on their website, still up with the C-SPAN footage of Kamala being sworn in, none other by racist Joe Biden. January 3, 2017, the headline on the page, still live today at the Sacramento Bee, is entitled, Watch Kamala Harris Sworn In as First Indian American Senator. Didn't say Indian American / African American. No, it was Indian American Senator. I wonder why the Sacramento Bee got it wrong that day. And it's still up. So these journalists, these so-called high and mighty, powerful elite, nose in the air, tone-deaf journalists, think Trump showed up to court black voters yesterday and failed. That's their impression, okay? And it's hilarious because those of us who understand Donald Trump even a little bit Okay. I don't know the man personally. I've been in rooms with him. I don't work for him. I never worked for him specifically or directly. Okay. But I admire his style. And I'll tell you why. As I said, he plays multidimensional chess. Okay. Apparently, they want to have rules. Rules for thee, but not for me, and all that stuff. So Trump can't talk race issues, but Kamala's allowed. Well, Trump doesn't play those rules. Trump's a brawler, a luchadora, we heard, right? He doesn't play those rules. He plays to win. He plays for keeps. That's why at least 50% of America loves him. That's why the international community reveres him. Okay? They get that. He goes and shows up toe-to-toe on the 38th parallel in Korea with Kim Jong-un to show him, I'll face you eyeball to eyeball and put you in your place. Okay? We know old Joe won't do that. We know Kamala ain't going to be able to pull that off. But, as all the members of the media were cringing about Donald's comments, then, of course, they run around Washington yesterday and they find every Republican member of Congress they could find. And are you guys having heart attacks? Can you believe Donald did this? What's your impression? Are you going to lose down ballot races now? Blah, 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 blah. And leave it to one of the most brilliant members of the United States Senate, Josh Hawley, a man of great intelligence, who says, it's not a great idea for either of the parties to be playing racial identity politics, whether it's white dudes for Kamala or whatever this is. We should spend less time talking about race and more time talking about how we're going to get people to work. Bingo! What have I been saying? Stay on message, people. Get focused. America's hurting. They need jobs. Right? You even heard, by the way, the Teamsters president compliment Josh Hawley for understanding the importance of getting the train workers to get the proper benefits and compensation so they could keep America going. But it makes you wonder, right? And Americans should actually be asking, when you talk to your friends, your families, your loved ones, the people who hate Trump, like I have some cousins who can't stand but foaming at the mouth about Trump. They find every conversation possible to bring up why they hate Trump, claims he's a felon, whatever. Ask them this question. Why does Kamala need to talk about race? Why does she need to talk about her race, whichever races she happens to associate with? Because this isn't 1964 Jim Crow South, the South states in America. This is 2024. This is a nation we understand there's still some racial divide, and there shouldn't be. But she wants to continue to talk about race. She has made her candidacy, the 2-week candidacy that she's got here, almost 2 weeks, about race. She didn't make it about her record. She's not talking about her accomplishments. She's not talking about the merits of her as a person, her as a prosecutor, her as a legislator, her as a human being, her as a wife, a stepmother, nothing. She wants to talk about being the first black female president. Why? Why can't she talk about her record? You know why? Because it's an embarrassment. She's a failure. And she doesn't want you to bring up the fact that she had a position yesterday that she no longer has, or she had a position in 2017 or 2019 or 2020 that she no longer has because it doesn't suit her desire to gain power. Right now, this is a power play. So this woman will lie, cheat, and steal to America to get the power she has always yearned. And I'm going to tell you more.
You are listening to Rally for the Republic with your host, Bryan Rudnick.
It's just like, they're upset Donald Trump went after Barack Obama, claiming he wasn't a citizen and the whole birther movement, whatever. And I remember the day, I can remember when Trump stood in New Hampshire in front of his helicopter and said, okay, they got the birth certificate out there on the White House website. And it really took, it was that ridiculous that the White House took how many years to try to prove that Barack Obama had a real birth certificate. But I've always said to people, because when they question Donald Trump's tactics about what he's doing, is he wrong? You'll find it takes some time for reality to set in, for all the facts, for the clouds to clear. But he makes these comments and they're actually based in fact, truth, and logic. He just does it in a masterful way, and he lets it linger for a while. But like with Barack Obama and the birth certificate, Obama gave a speech, a very famous speech one time, and he's addressing the race issues and Reverend Wright and so forth. And he talked about how his white grandmother would take him on the opposite, like they'd be walking down a sidewalk somewhere, wherever he was, Kansas or something like that, where he grew up. And his white grandmother would see a black man on the street. And because there was still that underlying racism people had, she would grab his hand and cross the street. And he would talk about how he dealt with issues of race in his youth. And he was trying to be logical and explain various life experiences. And in discussing basically discrimination, you never heard him once say, well, I was a Christian living in Indonesia because my stepfather brought me to Indonesia. As you may recall, that's Barack Obama's story. And you never heard him say, I got beaten up as a child as the only Christian child in a school in the most Muslim country in the world. I mean, let's face it. The Muslims don't like Christians. They don't like Jews. And somehow he lived in Indonesia without one speck of discrimination ever coming into his life. That's when you know there's something Barack Obama forgot to tell us about who he is, and where he's from. So when Donald Trump starts bringing up these questions about Kamala, there's some truth to it. There might be a lot more truth to it than you and the left want to acknowledge. I'm going to give you an example. I met some lovely people years ago, a doctor and his wife, and my wife and I began socializing with them and got to know them for a little bit of time. This great doctor and his wife, who both separately emigrated to the United States and didn't have a penny to their names. Their families didn't have a penny. They literally told us how little bit of money were in their pockets when their parents sent them to the United States to be with relatives to start being able to participate and earn the American dream. And they said to us, this is years ago, Kamala Harris, they found her to be an embarrassment or whatever words of that sort. They were Republicans, and they said they felt that Kamala was a farce because she tried to give this story about being an American of Indian descent, just like them, whose family came here and was impoverished and lived in a one-room apartment and things like that. And they said, you know what? That was every Indian family that came to the United States in the 70s and 80s. That's how we all got our start. That's how we all eventually built up businesses. Or this gentleman even told me first he was like an engineer, and then later in life he went on to medical school and, is now a famous plastic surgeon in the New England area or the Mid-Atlantic area, wherever they live these days, and with multiple offices and a thriving practice and kids going to Stanford and so forth. And this is what they explained to my wife and I about, they and their friends, like they had their friend group, Americans of Indian descent, where they were born in India, including this couple. They were each born in India, and their relatives and their siblings, and they all came here and they all love America. And they were so patriotic, lovely, lovely people, love this country. And some of their friends, they were very surprised at how they were falling for the Kamala story. And they said, it's all bogus and there's nothing special about this lady. So she's of India. But the Indians in America, or I should say Americans of Indian descent who live here, they look at Kamala. They know Kamala was bragging about being an Indian American. They know that. They know that was her story. That was her hook. She was trying to get them to give her money because of it. They know it, but they didn't fall for it. And the rest of America shouldn't either. Because you've got Kamala Harris, who's the biggest phony of them all. That's what the cackle is all about. Okay? So Trump's meeting with the black journalists and they think he's courting black voters. He's not. Okay? He's not. He had two agenda items from what I could tell. Number one, expose Kamala. Number two, change the narrative. Because now you're not talking about childless cat ladies any longer. And he realized that needed to stop. Okay? Because if Trump wanted to go court black voters, you know what Donald Trump does? Think about it. Anybody who's watched Donald Trump, when he was on trial in New York, he went to the hood. When he campaigned before, he brought rap stars in. He brought this one, that one, sports stars, you name it. He does press conferences. He goes to Detroit. He looks at the folks and he says, you're black. You've been voting Democrat all your life. How's that working out for you? Vote for me. It can't get any worse than what you've already gotten from the Democrats. I'm paraphrasing what he said here, but that's what he said. And he didn't mince words, and he wasn't scared to go into the hood, and he wasn't scared to tell them that. Because that's how Donald Trump courts black votes. And maybe he puts out some sneakers too. Okay? This is a man who's playing multi-dimensional chess. And these black journalists are getting their panties in a bind because he exposed Kamala, because they were buying the Kamala veneer hook, line, and sinker. And the left is hoping America buys the Kamala veneer hook, line, and sinker. But Trump knew this was the best venue to change the narrative and expose Kamala for being phony. Because now you're talking about it. Now I'm talking about it. Now the media is talking about it. Okay? Because there are years and years of lies about Kamala that need to be exposed. And now he saved J.D. Vance, who can maybe go talk about something else. And this is what makes Donald Trump a brilliant and once-in-a-lifetime candidate. Kamala's got the media bump. She's the new shiny object. Trump just took that away. Goodbye. Now we're going to battle. Now we're going to debate. He's accepted it. No votes were cast, but Kamala is basically the Democrat nominee. I think today's the day they're trying to make it official. Before it's official, and they're playing the games over at the DNC because they've got to continue duping black women into voting for Kamala. Kamala wants the sorority gals that she keeps talking to think they've got a seat at the table because of her. I mean, this is what you got to do. This is a woman who serves at the pleasure of her racist boss, who called him a racist on a national stage in a debate. She pointed it out. Yet somehow she's going to convince Black America they got a seat at the table because she basically decided to play second fiddle to the racist. Okay? That's something to be proud of. So she's got her friends from her California days over at Google and Meta and various other Silicon Valley leftists, and they're continuing to sanitize her past and erasing it everywhere they can. And she's supposedly going to have a record that nobody's seen, nobody can find, nobody knows, except for the White House website that still lists her basically as the DEI vice president. Okay? And she's exciting to people because they're believing the lie. Everything you're hearing about Kamala has been workshopped and studied and polled and focus grouped and you name it. They've done everything they can with the artificial president, the artificial intelligence president, to then have the DEI vice president come out. Signs were printed within seconds of Joe Biden dropping out, and everything about her, just like those signs, is fake. Okay? Fake and phony. And influencers on social media who generally like to expose anything that's not authentic should be having a field day. And it shouldn't be relegated to the conservatives, okay? In fact, I did hear that like some of the influencers are actually up in arms a little bit because they're getting some talking points and other stuff from the team Kamala, and they realize that this is like a farce, okay? And another example, because I keep going through and I tell you the notepad, have the notepad ready and have some more stuff to add to it. Here are 2019 quotes from Kamala Harris on the issues that she no longer stands for. There's no question, this is a quote, no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. And if elected, she said her top priority would be, quote unquote, the installation and maintenance of wind turbines and solar paneling. She needs to win the votes in Pennsylvania, people. There are 19 electoral college votes in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and Kamala Harris is singing a different tune today because that fake, phony DEI vice president, she doesn't stand by anything other than her yearning for power. That's what it is. That's what she's doing. What's interesting today, a lot of media coverage on the more than 100 venture capitalists who are backing Kamala. And I read some of these stories because I read so many different news sources, especially early in the morning when I'm trying to get the espresso to fill my veins. Before I was fully caffeinated, I caught wind of this, and I thought it was quite interesting, a Reuters article. And they're listing Reid Hoffman, the LinkedIn founder and investor, Chris Sacca, and Katie Stanton of Moxie, and Eva Ho of FICA Ventures, and Rebecca Candid of Union Square Ventures. And they've all pledged, they've signed letters, and they've pledged to vote for Kamala on November 5th. And of course, there's going to be checks. And the Box CEO, Aaron Levie, a Democrat donor, told Reuters that many people in Silicon Valley, quote unquote, were disillusioned with the state of the Democratic Party under Biden. But he is not a VC guy, and he's not signed this petition, but he donated to Harris, and he's donated as well to Biden before he dropped out. And he believes that the ascension of Kamala, quote unquote, completely changed the landscape. And all these people's a flurry of donations from his public and private industry peers. And he believes this is what really got me, and I thought said a lot about this situation that I've been addressing here and Kamala's phoniness, is that once she laid out her stance on business and technology, the floodgates could open further. So think about it. The smartest, wealthiest, supposed to be the best and brightest we got in America here in Silicon Valley. They got all this money and they don't know what to do with it. And they're just writing checks to Kamala because they've bought into the hype. They bought into the media hype. They bought into the fake shiny veneer. And now they're hoping America buys into the fake shiny veneer. I mean, literally, this guy says, if we know where her stance is on business and technology, the floodgates go open further. So they don't know where she stands on the issues most important to their pocketbooks. But new shiny object will give money. Really? Are you that insane? You don't realize that this woman's a socialist? Have you not seen her videos quoting Karl Marx? Really? Because you people will be the first ones she screws over. She's going for the billionaires tax. She'll go for the millionaires tax. She'll go for the people who make 62 cents. Because if you see what her economic policies are that are like AOC's, how do you think she's going to pay for it? Do you think when they're sending money to Ukraine, when they're sending Galaxy C-117s of cash over to Vladimir Zelensky, that somehow there's all this extra money laying around to pay for the illegals that are crossing the border? Really? And somehow we're still going to have cops? Really? I don't think so. You Silicon Valley idiots, you'll be paying for it first. And thank God you make more than me, so I know you'll be paying for it first. Let's just summarize here what I've had to say. Kamala, fake shiny veneer. She's fooling everybody. She is, forget DEI vice president. I think she's actually America's TikTok vice president. And that's why they don't know where she stands on the issues, because they saw a video they liked, they shared it, had good music, they donated. And that's why Donald Trump, he talks tough. He talks real. He explains the problems. And these morons at the Googleplex, and they don't want to have to slog it out 9 to 5 like you and I do. I mean, I do a lot more than 9 to 5, and you probably do a lot more than 9 to 5, because if you have to work these days in this inflationary economy, you don't have a choice, because our nation's in dire straits, and it's why you can't give up on her. And when I talk about her, I want to be clear, I'm talking about the United States of America, okay? This is the world's greatest country. And that's why I continue to broadcast here, the Rally for the Republic, where my friend Bob Rubin, America's foremost conservative financial advisor, has told me that I have to remind you that I am fearlessly broadcasting from the free state of Florida. I'm here in the free state of Florida, where after I download this episode to you, I will be out enjoying my freedoms that are not like Kamala Harris's California freedoms, because those don't exist. Here in the free state of Florida, in the liberal bastion of Palm Beach County, just like President Trump, this is where there are real Americans who love America, and I'm doing my part also to help them, because we still cling to our guns and religion here. That's why I've got friends who are going to be joining me as we go to enjoy our freedoms, okay? And there are great patriots here in Palm Beach County, and we're proud to have President Trump. We're proud to have Mar-a-Lago in the community. Okay, we're proud to host great leaders like Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the former president of Japan, and other world leaders who show up in Palm Beach County to pay homage to President Trump. More importantly, I want to be clear, we are proud to tell DEI TikTok candidates like Kamala Harris that you're an embarrassment, and we're not going to fall for your shiny veneer. In fact, we're not going to stand for the cackling either, and we're going to expose you, and we're going to expose idiots like Chuck Schumer, who, instead of securing the border, instead of securing our neighborhoods, instead of ensuring Americans can eat, he's worried about presidential immunity. Like anybody in America really cares. These people are embarrassments. We are ashamed of them. But who we're not ashamed of, and who we're very proud of, are the ladies like Simone Biles and the female gymnasts who have made America look proud and strong, and Kate Douglas and her swimming, and the other great athletes who have showed up and put on their best to demonstrate that this republic, America, the United States of America, is truly God's gift to us all. And we need to fight to keep it, like Dr. Benjamin Franklin told us. And we're not going to be a nation, even if we're stuck with Kamala Harris, and I hope to God we're not, who's going to put out boxers that fail gender tests. as they seek to compete on the world stage. No, that's not going to be us. That's not how we do it. Okay? You need to dive deep and bring back your Teddy Roosevelt Rough Riders. You need to think back to Ronald Reagan and the strength that he exuded towards our Russian foes. And then you need to think about those who are trying to go up the deep state, the media elites, the Hollywood elites, and anybody else who's trying to get rid of Donald Trump, because they recognize he's a threat to their power, which means they're a threat to our freedom. So thank you for listening to Rally for the Republic. I appreciate you joining me today on an extra long episode, but I hopefully have provided you the ammunition you need to keep you and your family free and safe. So join us at the next episode. Engage with us at feedback@rallyfortherepublic.com. Share and like us. Most importantly, as always, I ask you to stand shoulder and shoulder with us and fight to save this great nation. I'm Bryan Rudnick. I'm definitely not cackling Kamala, and I thank you. So God bless you and God bless America.
Thank you for joining us on Rally for the Republic, where we are fighting for America's future. Visit 1776coalition.com. Rally for the Republic podcast is available on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, and Google Podcasts. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and download. Join Bryan Rudnick next time as we continue to fight for the American way of life and challenge the hypocrisy. This is Rally for the Republic.